My sister stole from me once, I forgave. The second time, I set a trap and filmed it. Now she faces fraud charges and a sentence of 3 years in prison. My sister Rebecca signed the final page of the transfer forms with a flourish while I sat at the end of Mom's dining table. She laid down the pen with a triumphant yet pitying expression on her face as the afternoon sun touched her diamond bracelet. Rebecca passed the papers across to me and said, "There. Completed. I am now formally in charge of your little consultancy business. Natalie, don't worry. I'll handle it well." From across the table, Mom smiled at Rebecca. "You are really giving, my love. Assuming accountability for your sister's failing company. Not everyone would be so generous." Rebecca added, "Family helps family." But her tone gave the impression that she was doing me a great favor rather than robbing me of my companionship. It was obvious that Natalie lacked the skills necessary to manage the intricacies of a corporation. It is preferable to hand over responsibility to someone who genuinely comprehends business administration. Jack, my brother, gave a nod of approval. It makes sense. Natalie has always been more imaginative, not truly designed with the commercial world in mind. Rebecca has the connections, the expertise, and the MBA. This is the appropriate decision. Without saying anything, I took a drink of my coffee. Dad patted my hand and said, "Natalie, you're acting very mature about this. Admitting that you're in over your head must be difficult, but it shows wisdom to accept help. Knowledge?" Silently, I repeated. "Yes," Rebecca replied as she gathered the signed papers into her portfolio made of leather. "To be honest, Natalie, you ought to feel relieved. It's hard to run a business. All those choices, all those obligations. You can now just perform whatever you do, such as freelance consulting. Let me take care of the real business." Mom said, "Your little home office setup is cute. Very charming. Rebecca does, however, have a physical office in the financial district. Appropriate infrastructure. A business that is expanding requires that." I said, "Growing business. Do you believe that to be the case?" Rebecca chuckled. I had heard that piercing sound my entire life. "I've looked at your finances, Natalie. You're just barely making ends meet. Limited income, a small number of clients, and no discernible development trend. At best, it's a hobby business. However, we can truly make something of it with my network, strategic vision, and management." I echoed something of that. "Don't be resentful," Jack said. "Rebecca is attempting to assist. She will establish appropriate procedures, bring in actual clientele, and professionalize your business. You ought to be appreciative." I just said, "Thank you." Rebecca's face softened into something like empathy. "Natalie, I am aware that this is your child. You've been working on it for 4 years. However, there are moments when we must acknowledge that our best efforts fall short. That is not a sign of shame. Absolutely no shame." Mom concurred. "Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Sweetheart, he tried his hardest. Let your sister's experience now take it to the next level." I looked at my timepiece. 3:15 p.m. Excellent timing. "Is the transfer finished?" Rebecca was the one I asked. "Totally." She patted her portfolio in confirmation. "I had the documents prepared by my attorney. Everything is bound and lawful. I currently have complete control over all business operations, assets, client interactions, and intellectual property. You keep an 18% passive stake, which is a good amount given the situation of the company." "Very kind," I said. "Tomorrow I'll begin contacting your client list," Rebecca added. "Inform them that the management has changed. Assure them that under the new administration, services would continue and most likely even better." I told the clients, "Yes, you should definitely get in touch with them." My tone caused Rebecca to scowl a little. "Are you being snarky, Natalie?" "Absolutely not. You should definitely get in touch with the clients, in my opinion. They will be eager to learn about the change in management." Jack bent over. "What does that mean?" My phone buzzed before I could respond. Just as planned, I took a quick look at the screen. "I must take this, excuse me." I got up and answered the phone as I entered Mom's living room. "Speaking is Natalie Wright. This is Director Harris from the SEC Division of Enforcement, Miss Wright. As agreed upon, we are prepared to move forward. Do you have the topic now?" "Yes, the transfer was just finished." "Outstanding." And with complete knowledge, she voluntarily signed every document. She was assuming command of the company. Entirely voluntarily. She demanded it. In fact, I thought she was helping me. After a little silence, there may have been a silent chuckle. "I've spent 20 years looking into corporate fraud, Miss Wright. I have never witnessed someone willingly take over a bogus business while the real culprit stands by. This will be a fascinating experience. I hoped it would be instructive for you. We're 4 minutes out. Keep them there if you can. They won't leave," I said. "What kind of work?" "You don't have a business anymore, remember? I just took it over. Right? I said by mistake. Natalie. What's going on? Dad asked. You're acting strange. I went back to the dining room where my family was watching me with various expressions of curiosity and concern. Who was that? Mom asked. Work, I said simply, taking my seat again. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Yes, Jack firmly replied. You've been strangely calm about this whole transfer. No arguments, no resistance, no emotional response. It's not like you. Maybe I'm just relieved, I suggested. Like Dad said, accepting help is wisdom. Rebecca wasn't buying it. Something's wrong. Natalie, what aren't you telling us about the business? I asked. You'll find out soon enough, but there's a lot I haven't told you. Find out what? Mom demanded. The doorbell rang before I could respond, and everyone turned to face the front door. Are you expecting someone? Mom asked. Yes, I replied. That would be for Rebecca. Rebecca suddenly stood up. For me. I'm not expecting anyone. Calmly I said. You should probably answer the door, Mom. Mom approached the door, her face displaying confusion, and I watched as she opened it, revealing 4 individuals in dark suits, 3 men and 1 woman, all holding briefcases and badges. Mrs. Wright, the woman said. I'm Director Sarah Harris from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're looking for Rebecca Wright. The SEC. What? Why? Rebecca Wright. Director Harris walked into the dining room with the other agents on either side of her. I'm Director Harris. These are Special Agents Williams, Park and Thompson. We need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding corporate fraud, securities violations, and identity theft. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed silently. Jack leaped to his feet and exclaimed, What the hell is going on? Your sister has just taken legal ownership of a business entity that is currently under investigation by the SEC. Director Harris pointed to Rebecca's portfolio and said, That's insane. As Rebecca found her voice. There is nothing unlawful about Natalie's business, which is only a modest consulting firm. I murmured softly, It's not a consulting firm, and everyone turned to look at me. What? Mom said, The company Rebecca just took over isn't a consulting firm, I repeated. It's a shell corporation I've been running for the past 4 years to attract exactly this kind of fraudulent takeover. There was complete stillness after that. Director Harris grinned approvingly and said, Maybe you should explain, Miss Wright. I believe your family should know what's going on. I up and walked to the window. Rebecca had attempted to kidnap one of my real clients, a big one, 4 years prior. Rebecca protested, I did no such thing. But I calmly replied, You did. And the client reported it to me right away. She went behind my back, called them directly, and claimed to be my business partner with the power to renegotiate our contract. When I confronted you, you denied everything, saying that the client was lying, that I was paranoid, and that I couldn't handle competition. Mom shook her head. Rebecca refused. She did. I interrupted. And I realized that if she tried something once, she would try it again. They thought it suspicious that my business partner didn't know basic details about the work we'd been doing. Director Harris explained, You set up a fake company, a shell corporation, perfectly legal to create, but Miss Wright populated it with fabricated financial records showing impressive revenue from non-existent clients. Jack's face had gone pale. You set up a fake company, a shell corporation, he said, because it was specifically designed to look vulnerable and profitable enough to steal, but actually worthless and legally toxic. The crime happens when someone takes control of it and tries to use those false records for financial gain, which is precisely what Rebecca was planning to do. However, I didn't commit the fraud, I just created the fraudulent entity. Director Harris stated, Your sister is a private citizen who created a legal trap. Rebecca kept shaking her head. No, this is entrapment. You tricked me. Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce you to commit a crime you wouldn't otherwise commit. You chose to fall for the bait on your own. I didn't steal it, Rebecca insisted, giving it to me and signing the transfer documents. After you spent 4 months convincing our family I was incompetent and needed to hand over control, I said. After you told Mom and Dad my business was failing and I couldn't handle it. I pulled out my phone and added, I have recordings. Every conversation where you pushed me to transfer the business, every family gathering where you undermined my confidence, every phone call where you explained how my business would be better off under your management. That's not a gift, Rebecca. That's coercion. You had written legal documents transferring ownership to yourself and forced me to sign them. Agent Williams moved forward and said, Miss Wright, Rebecca Wright, we need you to accompany us to the regional office. Rebecca's expression changed from denial to panic. You recorded us? I recorded myself in conversations with you. I corrected. Perfectly legal in this state. Single-party consent. Dad said, that was the plan, wasn't it, Rebecca? Take control of my successful business. Use its impressive financial records to secure a business loan. Probably a substantial one. You'll be questioned regarding your intentions with the transferred business entity, your knowledge of its financial records, and your planned use of those records in seeking loans or investment capital. Loans. Dad said, weakly. Rebecca's silence was sufficient. Mom sank into a chair. Rebecca, tell me Natalie's lying. Tell me you weren't planning to do this. Rebecca's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Director Harris said firmly, we need to go. Miss Wright, you can contact a lawyer from our office. Use my company's fabricated revenue as collateral. Although this is investigatory questioning and not an arrest, you have the right to remain silent. Nevertheless, based on the information that Miss Wright has presented, I expect charges to be filed within 48 hours. Charges? Jack asked. You're going to charge her? Identity theft, corporate fraud, securities infractions, and attempted bank fraud? Director Harris affirmed, yes, charges are virtually certain. Rebecca turned to face me, her expression a mix of anger and betrayal, and said, you did this. The question is whether she cooperates, which would factor into sentencing recommendations. I was set up by you. You destroyed my life. No, I responded coolly. I was attempting to assist you. I gave you the chance to commit fraud, and you decided to take it. Those are two entirely different things. Rebecca growled. Mom was crying now. Natalie, how could you do this to your own sister? How could she try to steal from me? I countered twice. The first time I let it go because you're my sister, but this time I documented everything and waited for you to hang yourself out of greed. This didn't happen in a vacuum. You all helped persuade me to turn over my business by assuming I was failing without ever requesting to see actual financial records. How could you all enable her by continuously telling me I was incompetent and needed Rebecca's help? Agent Park had moved to Rebecca's side. Miss Wright, we need to go now. Rebecca grabbed her purse with trembling hands. This is wrong. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm fighting this. I shook my head, believing Rebecca's assessment of my business without verification, by pressuring me to give up control based only on her word. That's not help, that's bias. Director Harris said, that's your right, but I should warn you, Miss Wright's documentation is extensive. It includes 4 years of recorded conversations, fake financial records that you admitted to reviewing, transfer documents that you drafted with a clear intent to take ownership, and preliminary loan applications that you filed using the false revenue figures. It's a pretty solid case against you. Loan applications? Mom whispered. You've already applied for loans, Rebecca. Rebecca didn't respond, instead staring at me with a look of disbelief and hatred I had never seen before. I trusted you, Rebecca said. You're my sister. And you tried to steal from me, I said twice. The entire severity of the situation seemed to finally sink my family as the SEC officers walked Rebecca toward the door. Mom continued to cry softly. Dad remained still, staring at nothing, and Director Harris hesitated at the door as Jack slumped into a chair, his face ashen. Trust goes both ways. I'll be there, Miss Wright, Natalie Wright. We'll need you to come to the office tomorrow to give formal testimony. 9 work for you. Excellent work, by the way. This operation was textbook. We'll probably use it as a case study in fraud investigation training. She looked at my family. You should all be proud of her. She saw a pattern of criminal behavior and made a sophisticated trap to record it. Jack finally said, you planned this for 4 years. 4 years of pretending to have a failing business, letting Rebecca undermine you, letting us all believe you were incompetent, all to trap her. After they left with Rebecca, the house fell silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. Few people have the patience and strategic thinking to pull off something like this. Yes, I replied. That's sociopathic, Jack observed. That's justice, I clarified. Rebecca lied 4 years ago, and nobody took me seriously. She got away with it. But she's your sister, Mom exclaimed through tears. And I'm her sister, I said, setting up a scenario in which she would commit fraud once more, but this time with paperwork so complete that denial would be impossible. The business. Your true business. What is it? Corporate fraud investigation consultancy. I said I work with companies to discover and document internal fraud. I'm extremely excellent at it. That didn't stop her from trying to steal from me twice. Dad finally found his voice. I've assisted in the prosecution of 15 cases over the last 4 years, and this will be 16. Jack answered slowly. You're a fraud investigator. We all thought you were a failing consultant. You believed what Rebecca told you, I corrected her. She said I was failing and you accepted it without question. Mom said weakly. She works in finance. We thought she knew what she was talking about. She doesn't do finance. I agreed. She knew exactly what she was doing when she tried to steal my first client, and she knew exactly what she was doing when she took over my fake business. The MBA didn't make Rebecca honest. It only made her a more sophisticated criminal. None of you ever asked to see my actual financials, meet my real clients, or visit my actual office. Jack got up and said, I have to leave, I can't. I have to process this. Before you leave, I told him, you should know you're all on the recordings too. The SEC has the recordings of every time you pushed me to transfer the business, every time you accused me of being incompetent, and every time you confirmed Rebecca's theft. They won't charge you because you didn't profit financially, but your involvement is recorded. Dad reiterated, you're saying we helped Rebecca commit fraud. You created the environment that enabled it. Jack's face flushed scarlet. You recorded all of us. I recorded conversations I was part of. I responded, legal, as I mentioned, and necessary to prove the coercion element of Rebecca's fraud. You spent months persuading me that I was failing, that I needed Rebecca's assistance, and that moving the business was the right decision, I said. Rebecca needed that very much. Mom stood shakily and said, get out. I stared at her and said, what? Family pressure to make the theft look consensual. You did this. You caged your own sister. You used your own family. You're not the daughter I raised. No, I agreed. I'm not. Get out of my house, Mom continued, her voice now more forceful. I'm the daughter who discovered that sometimes the only way to obtain justice is to create it yourself, and that, as Mom once said, that's not justice. I'm the daughter who discovered that family will believe your siblings' lies over your truth, and that you have to document everything because no one will believe you. That's retaliation. It's both, I said plainly. Rebecca did something wrong. I recorded it. She will be held accountable. That's how justice operates. You could have just cut her off, Dad said. You could have refused to collaborate with her. You could have kept your distance. You didn't have to ruin her life. I tried that. I withdrew after the initial theft attempt, but Rebecca persisted in interfering with my work life, undermining me, and setting herself up to steal again. The only way to stop her was to allow her to steal something worthless and be caught. Jack shook his head. This whole thing is sick. I said, raising my voice for the first time. What's sick is that not one of you believed me when I said Rebecca tried to steal my client 4 years ago. What's sick is that you all assumed I was incompetent without evidence. What's sick is that you enabled a criminal because she had the right credentials and I didn't. We were trying to help you, Mom insisted, by assuming I was failing, by pressuring me to give up my business, by never once asking if I actually needed help. I picked up my bag. You're right, Mom. I should leave, but before I do, you all need to know that Rebecca will be charged with a federal crime, that there will be a trial, and that you will all probably be called as witnesses to testify about the family pressure, the transfer documents, and the conversations in which Rebecca said she was helping me. This is not the end of the story. It is just getting started. When she tried to steal from me, I stopped her. That's not retaliation. That's self-defense. I left before anyone could react. Outside, I sat in my car for a while, letting the adrenaline wear off. My phone buzzed, a text from Director Harris. For what it's worth, I loved Rebecca. I loved all of you. But love doesn't trump honesty, and it doesn't excuse crime. I said, thank you. You did great work, Miss Wright. This case is airtight. Suspect in custody. Questioning starting now. I received another text message, this time from an unknown number, saying, Miss Wright, this is Rebecca's lawyer, David Blake. I need to talk to you about dropping charges. My client made a mistake but meant no harm. I will see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. After a moment of staring at the message, I responded back. Your client committed federal crimes. Surely we can resolve this within the family. This has nothing to do with family. It is a criminal offense. The SEC has complete records. She's your sister. He said promptly. There's nothing to resolve. I replied, it's not a business dispute, it's fraud, and yes, I really do want criminals to face consequences, even when they're related to me, especially when they're related to me. I blocked the number and drove to my actual office, which was a professional suite in a downtown building where I ran my actual consulting firm. Do you really want to ruin her life over a business dispute? As I walked in, Rachel, my assistant, looked up at the firm that assisted businesses in identifying fraud. The firm had already successfully prosecuted 15 cases and was set to add a 16th. How did it go? Perfectly, I answered. She signed everything. The SEC made the pickup and she's in custody now. Rachel shook her head in disbelief. 4 years? You spent 4 years playing this out. Had to be comprehensive, I replied. A lot of documentation is needed in fraud cases. Besides, I had to be positive she would try it again. One theft attempt can be the result of a miscommunication. There were 2 attempts, the second of which was thoroughly recorded. There is a pattern there. Your family must be devastated. I acknowledged that they are upset. They believe that I should have handled it in private, that I am vindictive, and that I trapped her. Had you to? Rachel inquired. I thought about the query. Rebecca attempted to defraud me of a $60,000 client 4 years ago. I went up to her in private. She disputed it. My relatives didn't trust me. She got away with it entirely. Therefore, when no one believes you and the offender is unpunished, handling it privately doesn't work. All right, Rachel said. I also mentioned that additional victims will benefit from this lawsuit. They will use it as an example for training, according to Director Harris. What I did will teach other fraud detectives. It may encourage other victims to accurately record their instances. Others learn a lesson from Rebecca's crime. My phone rang. Mom is calling. I let the voicemail go. The voicemail notification showed up a minute later. I put it on the speaker. Natalie's mother. I've been chatting to your father. In some cases, we believe you to be correct. 4 years ago we should have believed you, but we didn't. Without verifying the facts, we forced you to transfer the business. Rebecca's actions were made possible by us. We are responsible for that. However, this is excessive. She will be incarcerated. Because you set her up, Natalie, your sister will be sent to prison. Give me a call, please. This has to be fixed. I erased the voicemail. Rachel kept a close eye on me. Are you all right? I said, I'm fine. Surprisingly, I was. None of the remorse, doubt, or guilt I had anticipated came to pass. Rebecca had broken the law. I kept a record of it. Justice was being done. Now what will happen? Rachel inquired. I will be providing the SEC with formal testimony tomorrow. Next week is most likely when the arraignment will take place. Rebecca is going to enter a not guilty plea. Her attorney will undoubtedly attempt to work out a settlement. In exchange for cooperation and restitution, the SEC will probably make an offer or lower the charges. She will accept it if she is intelligent. And it goes to trial if she is not intelligent. In open court, the documents are presented. The loan applications she submitted using false revenue figures, the recordings of her intimidating and undermining me, the way she drafted the transfer documents, and the pattern of behavior. She will be found guilty and given a stiffer sentence than she would have received had she accepted the offer. Rachel said, You've thought this through. I've had 4 years to consider it, I said. This is an instinct, Rachel. Every possible result, every potential issue, every legal viewpoint, this is a tactic. My phone rang once more. This time Jack, I responded via speaker. What? Natalie, Mom is a mess, I said. You should return and speak with us about what? Dad isn't any better. About making this right? About putting this right? Although Rebecca made a mistake, federal charges are not warranted. She is a member of the family. Fraudulent family members. I repeated myself. You don't have any proof the first time. Her word is against yours. For the first time, the client has provided me with an official form detailing Rebecca's efforts to reroute money. I retained it even though I didn't use it for 4 years since I was attempting to maintain family ties. Now the SEC has it. Jack was silent for a while. You've had this planned from the start. Since the beginning, I have been recording crimes. I made the correction. Rebecca made the decision to commit them. I simply decided to record them. Jack's voice broke as he said, She's your sister. How can you treat her like this? How was she able to harm me? I retorted. You ought to be asking that question. How was it possible for Rebecca to attempt to defraud her own sister? How could she have undermined me, sabotaged me, and set herself up to defraud me for 4 years? Why am I the bad guy because I stopped her? Jack answered, Because you trapped her. You set up a scenario that would force her to commit a crime. I set up a scenario that demonstrated her readiness to break the law. I made the correction. Rebecca had the option to refuse. She had the option to be truthful. Instead of attempting to take from me, she could have truly assisted me. She made her decisions. I simply recorded them. We are your family. That must be worth something, Jack said. Yes, it did. Silently, I said. I granted her 4 years because of this. It took her 4 years to confess to the first theft, apologize, and alter her conduct. She didn't. Her condition worsened. Family did matter, Jack, but not enough to take precedence over justice. I hung up and switched off my phone. Rachel was silent for a while. Will kids ever comprehend, in your opinion? Most likely not, I conceded. They will always perceive me as the bad guy and Rebecca as the victim. That's all right. This isn't for their comprehension. It's correct, so I'm doing it. Is it? Rachel inquired. Correct? I mean, I'm not passing judgment. Sincerely, I'm curious. Is it appropriate to set up your own sister? I gave it careful thought. Rebecca is a criminal. 4 years ago she committed fraud and got away with it. She planned to commit fraud once more, this time using those fictitious financial statements to defraud a bank of what could have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. She would have been apprehended eventually if I had allowed her to continue. But not before doing actual harm. Banks would suffer financial losses. Resources would be squandered by investigators. There may be other people involved. I avoided all that downstream damage by halting her now and providing explicit documentation. It is hence utilitarian. I confessed, I'm sick of being the victim, to which Rachel replied, greater good, it's also personal. Rachel said, that's fair. We worked until 7 that evening preparing paperwork for the SEC meeting the following day. I was tired of being doubted and of criminals getting away with crimes because of their family, or because no one documented properly. Rebecca victimized me once and faced no consequences. I made sure she couldn't do it again. As I drove home, I pictured Rebecca sitting in an SEC interrogation room, likely still claiming she had done nothing wrong, that I had trapped her, and that this was all a misunderstanding. By the time I left the office, I had compiled 4 years' worth of recordings, financial documents, correspondence, and witness statements into a thorough case file. The truth, no matter how anyone twisted it, was that she had committed fraud, and I had stopped her. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony at home, gazing out over the city lights. The recordings and the transfer documents she drafted and the loan applications she had filed did not lie. I stopped a criminal, prevented bank fraud, created a case study that would help train future investigators, and demonstrated that sometimes the only way to get justice is to build it yourself. My family was probably gathered somewhere, talking about how horrible I was, how I'd betrayed Rebecca, and how I'd destroyed the family. Let them talk. My phone was still off, sitting on the table next to me, and I knew that when I turned it on, there would be dozens of messages. Pleas from Mom, rage from Jack, perhaps even a message from Rebecca's lawyer threatening legal action for entrapment that would never stand up in court. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I was just a fraud investigator who had successfully stopped and documented a criminal. The fact that the offender was my sister was regrettable, but it didn't matter. Justice didn't stop at family lines, and I wasn't going to act differently to appease everyone. Rebecca would go to trial, likely accept a plea bargain, and face 2 to 3 years in federal prison, probation, and restitution. Her financial career was over. Her reputation was ruined, but she had done crimes, including attempting to steal from her own sister twice, and now she would finally be held accountable. If my family couldn't see the difference, that was their problem, not mine. As I sipped my wine and took in the city lights, I was happy to know that tomorrow I would testify against my sister, and that I wouldn't feel bad about it at all, because there are things that are more important than family loyalty, like justice, honesty, integrity, and the straightforward idea that criminals should be held accountable regardless of their last name.